Hello everyone, this is part 10 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The first thing that Shino noticed about the cave system they found themselves in, after the absolute darkness that engulfed them, was the foul stench. He wasn't what the cause for the stench was. All he knew was that it was inciting his Kikaichu family to even greater levels of panic. Their sheer combined instincts were almost overwhelming him, despite his attempts at blocking such feelings. Shino was so lost in thought that the sudden snapping sound that filled the air made him jerk. Seconds later, his eyes stung as a faint glow filled the air. That's better. Turning his head, he found Ino holding a glowstick, looking as if she didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. Putting her aside for the moment, Shino turned his attention back to the cave. The walls appeared normal, and there were a few miniature stalactites and stalagmites. It appeared normal enough, but he saw no immediate exit, which prompted him to regain his feet and begin moving about, searching. The light of the glow stick only extended so far, but he was reasonably sure that he could find his way out. It would be risk to move too far away from Ino, which meant the best option would be to coax his Kikaichu out. This proved impossible. The raw panic they felt overrode any commands he attempted, which meant he was in no better shape than Ino. He amended that though quickly, remembering that she, at least, had a sword. Without his family, there wasn't much he could do. Just keeping the thousands of voices blocked off enough to allow him to function was giving him an intense headache and making it hard to think. Like, what now? Shino remained silent for several long minutes and then turned back to face the girl. That was, indeed, a very good question. Obviously, we begin to search for a way out, since our original entrance is now blocked from us. But, are we even sure there is another exit? Ino asked, climbing to her feet, holding the glow stick high. I mean, like, aren't caves isolated? No, Shino answered, frowning, though she couldn't see that. In all honesty, he knew very little about caves, but what he did know was that they honestly didn't have many options. He was more than willing to concede that entering the cave was not a good idea. Oh, Ino responded, before her jaw tightened. Then what are you standing there for? I was merely waiting for you, Shino responded, arching an eyebrow before turning back to the cave and the problem set before them. Shaking his head, Shino moved forward, pleased to see the light following him which illuminated the far wall, where he discovered a narrow gap in the rock. Is that the way out? Ino asked anxiously from behind him, hovering just behind his shoulder. I am not sure, Shino answered, already thinking of how best to find out. If his family had been willing, he would have sent one of them, but they weren't, so he had to think of some other way to find out. Lowering his gaze, he spotted a rock just the right size and something clicked in his head. Stooping, he selected the rock and then tossed it, listening intently. If the passage was AS end, then it would hit the wall, but if it wasn't, seconds later the sound of a rock clattering to the earth reached them. Well, Ino prompted impatiently. Shino remained silent, considering the various odds as best he could and then nodded reluctantly. We have no other choice. That said, he turned sideways and squeezed into the gap, followed seconds later by a grumbling Ino. It was a strange sensation for Shino. He felt like was constantly in danger of being crushed, always in danger of his own panic adding to the panic of his Kikaichu. He also noticed the gap was beginning to slope downward. It was slight, but it was definitely there. Down, down and down it went, until, finally, it widened to a full-size tunnel that allowed Shino and Ino to walk side by side. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the tunnel forked, and they were forced to stop. Okay, so now what? Ino muttered, staring between the two separate tunnels before glaring at him. Well, without exploring both tunnels, I cannot say for certain, Shino answered, studying both intently. Well, why not just whip out those bugs of yours up and get 'em to look? Ino snapped. Quote. I can't, Shino responded calmly, moving towards each tunnel, attempting to find the correct path. They are too caught up in their sheer panic. It is all I can do to keep their fear and panic from swamping myself. Damn it, Ino muttered, shooting him a nasty glare before pointing randomly at the tunnel on the left. Then we should go that way, if you can't figure things out. Shino paused and then raised an eyebrow curiously. Why that tunnel? Ino snorting pushed past him, leading the way. Your hair. It's moving to the right. So, that means a breeze has to be coming from the left. Which denotes air, Shino supplied, following behind her, nodding to himself. Maybe he didn't have to worry so much. Ino wasn't sure how long they had been down there, hours, maybe, but what she did know was that she hated it. She had several reasons to hate it, too. First, she had a mild case of claustrophobia. Then, of course, there was the fact that they were beginning to run out of glow sticks and solid pills. Added to this was the unknown stench that was filling the tunnels, and, perhaps most importantly, the discovery of cocoon forms glued to the walls. Every time she thought about that, Ino shivered, her imagination trying to relay what it would feel like to be so helpless and slowly. To know at first what was happening, to feel something drinking your fluids before your heart and lungs finally gave out. To make matters worse, Ino's imagination kept picturing Naruto going through the same thing, which was enough to sicken her completely. Glancing at Shino, Ino studied him intently, wondering how he was holding up. After they had discovered those cocooned bee, it had taken a firm shove from Ino to get him moving again. It was almost like the longer they were in the tunnels, the worse the panic became for him, not that she could tell from his expressions or body language. If she wasn't sharp and careful, Shino would freeze and get them K, and, not for the first time, Ino wished that it had been Shino that had S and not Naruto. She had seen how he reacted to these things. Naruto hadn't been intimidated at all, and, best of all, he would talk to her to keep the silence from overwhelming them. Shaking her head, Ino shifted her attention away from Shino to study the pale light as it danced along the wall. The silence and feeling of dread was slowly growing until it was so thick that Ino actually began to think that this was some kind of hell. Maybe it was a punishment for her misdeeds or a wasted life. It was enough that it made her want to scream. Just as her mouth opened, and she prepared to do just that, they reached the tunnel and entered into a circular chamber where a dozen or more intersecting tunnels waited. Ino cursed under her breath, staring at each one, and then wondered which one they should take. Hell, how could she know? They weren't even able to use any of Shino's bugs to search the tunnels. Turning, she started to question the boy, only to find him glaring at something, his shoulder tense. If she didn't know better, she would have sworn he was in an argument with someone, but there was no one around to argue with. Had he finally snapped and was now plotting her death? Then, suddenly, his body relaxed, and he turned his head to watch something move away and down one of the tunnels. Shino, you okay? Ino asked hesitantly, resisting the urge to pull her sword in case he turned on her. I'm fine. Well, it looked like you were arguing with someone. I was. Shino turned to stare at her from behind those sunglasses, which she found creepy and weird. I had to shout at my family, but Shishi-chan agreed to check the tunnels for us. You mean, you got one of your bugs to go look? Ino said, blinking. Aren't they terrified or something? Yes, which is why I could only get one of them to do this for me, Shino said before crouching down. It will take a while, there are 12 tunnels and only one of her. Ino shifted her weight uneasily, knowing that she had no choice but to wait and see what happened. Turning her mind away from the weight, Ino attempted to muse about Sasuke. This, however, seemed pointless. Did it really matter what he was doing while she was trapped in these tunnels among spiders with an almost useless teammate? Ino knew the answer, but she thought about him anyway. It kept her busy. When Shishi returned, Ino stirred long enough to ask if it was time to move, then, receiving a negative answer, she returned to thinking about the dark-haired boy that she had been crushing on since the first time she saw him. Ino honestly wasn't sure what it was, that silence or his aloofness. Maybe it was his looks or those dark eyes. She was still trying to figure out the source of her crush a few minutes later when an odd sound reached her. It echoed in the small section of tunnels. It was startling, and it was horrible. A venomous hiss, followed by the sound of something large moving through the tunnel they had just came out of. Glancing briefly at a suddenly on guard Shino, Ino gulped and then turned her attention back to the tunnel, waiting for whatever was following them. Almost absently, Ino reached over her shoulder and pulled her sword, hissing from its sheath. Grasping it like the Head Bunshin had trained her, Ino assumed the best stance she could, preparing to use the weapon. The sounds were getting closer, and Ino strained to see past the glowstick's light, but could see nothing but darkness. The sounds suddenly faded, and Ino tensed, uncertain of what to do. Ino-san, Shishi-chan says she found a tunnel that leads to something important. Ino hesitated, unwilling even to look away from the tunnel behind them. Shifting her weight and grip, she responded with an urgency she didn't bother hiding. Is it a way out? She is not saying, however, it is a possibility, Shino admitted. Ino set her jaw anxiously before she nodded and turned, heading for the tunnel Shino indicated. It was narrower than any of the other tunnels she had been in, so narrow that it was actually amazing she could still breathe. Not that breathing was a pleasant task, the air was stagnant and even richer with the mysterious stench. It was only through sheer force of will that she kept moving and kept Shino moving with her. It took several minutes or was it hours for Ino to realize that the tunnel was beginning to slope upwards. She just prayed it kept doing so. Up meant they were approaching the surface and, possibly, another exit. She was banking on that. She had only 2 soldier pills left, and she didn't want to have to use them before they escaped. Then, just as the glow stick faded out, she stumbled out of the tunnel, and crashed painfully into something solid. Damn it, Ino hissed, then paused, listening to her voice echo. Blinking, she quickly fumbled through her hip pouch and grasped her last glow stick. Snapping the plastic tube, she shook the contents, replacing the darkness with a dim light that vaguely hinted at how vast the cavern she was standing in was. Turning her attention back to what she had into, she discovered a column of rock. Cursing to herself, she turned away to see what her teammate was doing. Shino, amazingly enough, had lit his own glow stick and was busy moving through the cavern as if searching for something. Hey, you shouldn't be wasting that, Ino hissed, moving over to join him, thus increasing his light. The boy ignored her, and she had opened her mouth to say something else when she noticed Shino kneeling beside an oblong white shape. Is that what I think it is? Ino asked, disgust leaking into her voice. This one seems Shino said after a moment, and then he turned his head, staring at something else that the combined glow sticks only barely revealed. Quote. So that is what she found. What? Ino asked, looking in the same direction, but only saw the edge of another cocoon. Shino, however, seemed to be ignoring her once more as he hurried over to it, kneeling yet again. Shishi-chan said that the tunnel led to something important, Shino explained as he studied the object intently. I believe I have found what she meant. What the hell are you? Ino paused, however, watching with wide eyes as Shino s through tea white material with a kunai to reveal Naruto's face. He looked pale, his lips were even turning blue. Shaking herself out of the shock she felt, Ino leveled a glare at Shino, wondering why the boy had wanted to find Naruto's body. It wasn't as if they could carry it out of there. Then, Ino blanched when Shino reached out to touch the boy's What the hell is wrong with you? You shouldn't be touching AS body. He isn't Shino responded calmly, hand moving to the blonde's tea. Shishi-chan says that she smelled his chakra, and chakra can't exist in AS body. He's alive. Ino blinked, suddenly kneeling beside Shino. Her mind was reeling at this development. She would have sworn that he was after all, that spider had dragged him underground. Yes, barely, but he is alive, Shino answered, using his kunai to at the rest of the webbing as he continued talking. Obviously, he has been poisoned. I think, however, that he was captured. Captured? Shino nodded, setting back slightly. Yes. The ninja controlling these spiders obviously wanted to understand his enemies better. So, the spiders captured Naruto, poisoning him so that they didn't have to keep a constant eye on him. So that means they'll be back, Ino guessed, glaring at Shino. What now? We can't drag him around with us. I know, was all the boy said. Well, Ino suddenly snapped, her temper rising with each minute the boy was silent. It wasn't that she didn't like knowing Naruto was alive, or even that she didn't want to take him with her, but right now she was staring at the risk of losing her own life. I could see if my Kikaichu would be willing to draw the poison out of him, Shino finally suggested, a note of uncertainty in his voice. I am not sure how that would work, however. My father explained the basics only once. Well, we can't just leave him here now, Ino said, a hint of her exhaustion finding its way into her voice. That scared her. She was going to collapse soon, and those soldier pills were only going to make it worse. I know, Shino said after a moment, which was followed by a more pronounced silence before he released his own breath. My Kikaichu are no longer listening to me. I cannot even shout 'em down so that they can hear my voice. Then what the hell are we supposed to do? Ino snapped, glaring at Shino and then looking at Naruto. She was trying to think of anything to fix this mess. Nothing was coming to mind, however. All they had were 3 soldier pills, her sword and whatever other small weapons they still had. Ino-san, can you bring your light closer please? Shino suddenly asked and Ino, grumbling, did as asked, glaring at the boy. Shino merely focused on Naruto for several minutes and then leaned back, as if deep in thought about something. Ino ignored the gray-clad boy and turned her attention back to Naruto, surprised at what she found. His skin appeared to be regaining its color, and his lips were no longer blue. Is the poison wearing off? It would appear so, Shino said softly. Ino remained silent, staring at the boy and then, remembering where she was, she glanced around anxiously. They needed to move. There was no telling when those spiders would come to repoison the blonde. Still, it was rather obvious that Shino wasn't about to leave the boy, so Ino left her glow stick next to him and retreated ever so slightly to keep an eye out for spiders. It felt like she stood there for hours, waiting for an attack that would never come. As a matter of fact, she was so intent on this imaginary attack that, when Shino told her that Naruto was coming around, she yelped and jumped. Recovering, Ino quickly moved to stare down at the blonde, watching as Naruto's face twitched and shuddered. Finally, his eyes opened halfway, and he stared up at them for several minutes in silence. Unnerved, Ino shifted her weight and froze, noticing the way his eyes flickered toward her. The look on his face was perplexed, almost as if he wasn't sure if he was awake or not. Am I in heaven? Naruto finally managed to croak, his eyes never leaving her face. No, Shino answered, stoic as ever. Is this hell? Naruto asked after a moment, continuing to stare at her, making Ino very self-conscious. Not quite, Shino answered, leaning back slightly. Oh, Naruto whispered before nodding, his gaze finally leaving Ino to settle, instead, on Shino. Then tell the pretty Kami to go away, please. That said, the blonde promptly passed out. Quote. That was odd, Shino said after a moment, his tone obviously confused. Ino nodded in silent agreement, but she felt herself blushing with the knowledge that he had been referring to her. Shino had never considered how troublesome carrying Naruto would be. After all, the boy had to weigh less than he, however, that did nothing to change the weight factor. The reason he was carrying the boy was really quite simple. Any time they stopped for a short break at Ino's insistence, the blonde would fall asleep, only to complain loudly when they woke him up. To make matters worse, Naruto was constantly wandering off in a daze. After a while, both Shino and Ino agreed that he should be carried so that he could sleep off whatever poison was still affecting him. It had been Shino's idea, really, and for some reason Ino declared that meant that Shino had to carry him. Since Shino was not about to leave Naruto behind, he honestly didn't have much in the way of choices. However, the worst part to Shino was the utter silence in his head. His family had apparently gone so far over the bend that they had seen themselves off from him. Of course, while this could have been good news since he didn't have to constantly concentrate on blocking their panic, Shino still couldn't concentrate. He was used to the presence of his family, and, without it, he was constantly distracted and unsteady on his feet. So okay, I'm starting to wonder about these tunnels, Ino said, speaking for the first time since they had decided which tunnel to take a half-hour ago. Wonder what? Shino asked distractedly, wondering if it was just him or if the light of his glow stick was growing brighter. Duh. Ino snorted, glancing over her shoulder. We have to have been down here, a totally long time, right? I'm starting to wonder if they actually lead to a way out or not. We are going up, Shino explained patiently. It is only a matter of time before we find a way out. I'm sure, Ino muttered, turning away to continue her silent trek along the tunnel. Shino shrugged her comment off, studying the glow stick intently. The light was definitely getting brighter, but there was no wind. That was strange to say the least. Even in the tunnels there was the occasional breeze. If there was light, there should have definitely been one. Which meant they were approaching another cavern, one that had a light source. Like, is it me or is the tunnel getting brighter? Ino suddenly asked, but Shino merely shrugged Naruto off his shoulders and hurried past her. Hey, what's wrong with you? Yes, it is indeed growing brighter, Shino said over his shoulder and then pushed her to the back of his mind as he crept forward. Maybe it was just the lack of his family, or maybe he was just anxious, but Shino couldn't trust this tunnel so blindly. Reaching the end of the tunnel, he froze, staring out over a vast cavern from 10 feet above the floor. Even with his sunglasses, Shino winced, not because the torches were bright, but because he had grown so used to the glow sticks. As his eyes adjusted, he saw large dark blobs. Eventually, they became vague shapes and, finally, he could make out minor details. It took him a moment to realize that what he was staring at were roughly a dozen spiders, moving around in the cavern, talking in an odd language. Or, at least, he thought it was a cavern until he turned his attention to the smooth walls where flickering torches resided and the equally smooth floor, which revealed that it was a man-made chamber. Frowning, he turned his attention once more to the spiders and finally allowing them to settle on a tall, hooded figure standing near an opening where a set of rough-hewn stairs seemed to reside. Shino could see nothing of the man's face, nor any marks that revealed what village this man was from. Not that it mattered since, obviously, this man had to be the ninja controlling the spiders. Looking around once more for anything he missed, he paused, noticing a familiar figure kneeling between two spiders. Frowning, Shino carefully retreated back the way he came, and, thankfully, he didn't have to go far before he ran into Ino once more. The girl was grumbling, almost bowed beneath the weight of the unconscious Naruto. Seeing the way her eyes narrowed in accusation, he held a hand up, speaking quickly before she could. I believe the way out is ahead, but I am not certain. Could you use your clan's ability? Ha! Ino blinked, her anger temporarily forgotten as she eased Naruto off her shoulders. Well, I could, but, like. You know I'm not psychic, right? I mean, I'd have to have somebody's head to peek into, and I'm not sure I can try that on a spider. Shino nodded, reaching out to help her. I understand. Joji-san has been captured, so perhaps he would make the ideal target. Shouldn't we, Ayano, try to rescue him? Ino asked, glancing at him curiously. Shino, however, shook his head, knowing the truth more easily than she did. Even if Naruto were healthy, we would be unable to rescue him. However, if we can escape before he is we may be able to contact someone who can. But to do that, I have to peek into his head, Ino said sourly before straightening up to head toward the entrance. Oh, and Shino. Pausing, the girl turned back, a frighteningly sweet smile on her face. If you ever make me carry him again, I'm going to get the biggest damn can of insecticide I can find. That said, the girl turned and started walking. Unnerved slightly, Shino remained where he was, unsure if he should stay with Naruto or join Ino in case she needed help. If his family had still been talking, it wouldn't have taken him longer than few seconds to decide, but, since they weren't, it took him several minutes before he finally hurried after Ino. He had just caught up to her, and was preparing to say something when he saw something that would have sent every bug in his body into a horrified stupor if they weren't already there. It was a spider, or at least the lower portion of it was a spider. It had 8 massive legs and a body of gray. The way it moved denoted advanced age. But what truly terrified him was the rest of the spider, which, from the waist up, was her old woman's body, and it looked every inch like the ideal grandmother. Her voice was soft, unclear, but it was obvious that she was speaking to the ninja who spoke for her. Ryadu-sama bids you welcome, Joji-san. It has been centuries since the last Minamoto entered this hallowed den. Joji struggled at that, and the mysterious ninja's tone became slightly mocking. What? Has Minamoto Yakanatama no Joji, the last surviving member of the Minamoto clan, lost his manners? The other spiders made clicking sounds, as if laughing, but the mysterious ninja was quiet, listening to Ryadu as she spoke once more. Nodding, the man reached out and yelled something, probably a gag Shino guessed, from Joji's mouth. This act was followed by the headman's loud, indignant voice. How dare you? I am Minamoto. You have no right to drag me here and treat me like some sort of animal. Ryadu obviously said something which the mysterious ninja nodded in agreement with. Ryadu-sama says, "You are from the clan that betrayed us. Your clan summoned us to the world, in this foul shape, to build their power, and then, when fear grew, your clan attempted to seal us away. We have waited centuries and then you freed us. For that, we would thank you." "Thank me?" Joji interrupted furiously. "She had me dragged out of my house in the middle of the night and gagged with webbing to thank me." "Do not interrupt Ryadu-sama," the mysterious ninja said threateningly. "She has suffered your continued life only because of the service you performed in freeing her." "Well then, what the hell does she want?" The mysterious ninja raised a hand, palm up, speaking calmly as ever. "As I was saying, for freeing her she would thank you. For allowing her to feed so that she could bring forth her children once more, she would thank you. However, you have brought, ninja, into our world, and this has caused the deaths of her children." "That wasn't my fault," Joji shouted angrily. "How was I supposed to know that stupid Jonan would have those masked men following him?" "Regardless," the mysterious ninja said, waving a hand dismissively. "It is still your responsibility and, as such, you must restore to her the chi she had lost with the death of those children." "What?" Joji shouted before suddenly going slack in the grasp of the spiders holding him. Shino blinked, wondering if the man had then, remembering Ino, he glanced over at her. Her body was stretched out as if she had lain down to take a nap, and he wondered about that for a split second before he realized what she had done. Mastering his body, he scooped her up and quietly slipped back into the tunnel. It would be safer, and besides, his family's silence was starting to chew at his mind. As a matter of fact, he nearly forgot what he was doing several times on the trip back to where Naruto was resting. He did make it, though, and, setting Ino down gently, Shino paused wondering what to do now. It was getting harder and harder to concentrate, he just prayed it wouldn't get them all killed. Shaking his head, he settled down to wait, only to jerk at the sound of a shrieking wail that echoed from the end of the tunnel. Realizing that had to be Joji, he quickly turned to face Ino, worried that she might have not made it out of the body in time. This proved a needless worry as her eyelids fluttered open, her face twisting into a grimace. "Are you okay?" Ino met his gaze. It was unsettling to say the least, but she quickly looked away, her voice trembling. "You were right, that opening is an exit. Is it guarded?" Shino asked after a moment. "By more than just the ninja and spiders we saw." "Yes," Ino grated out. "5 spiders. I see," Shino replied before falling silent. He struggled with the various questions that were now facing him: spiders that actually were demons, an exit that was heavily guarded, a mysterious ninja. "So, now what?" Ino finally asked, and Shino looked up, seeing the way she kept her face set in a scowl. "Obviously, we have to slip past those spiders and that ninja down there. Possibly, if we could defeat the ninja, then we would have an easier time. Right, but, how do we do that, exactly? You know, since he's not really in control of those things." "I don't know," Shino admitted, his voice growing slightly brittle. "My Kikaichu are not talking. Without them, I can't concentrate. I doubt I can fight in this condition." "Well then, what are we supposed to do?" Ino demanded heatedly. "I can't fight those damn things, even with this sword." Shino nodded, an idea tugging at the edges of his mind. He lowered his head, trying to bring it into focus, which took several long minutes, and then he realized what he had been trying to think of. "Remember what Hayate-sensei told us before we left Konoha. Each of us has a strength. Mine was strategy. Okay, but that still doesn't tell me how." "The how, Ino-san, would be tactics," Shino said before glancing at Naruto. "He is our tactician, so he will have to tell us how best to carry out my strategy of slipping out unnoticed." "But he's unconscious," Ino hissed. "Plus, even when Naruto-kun is awake he's useless." "True," Shino allowed, raising an eyebrow, noting the way she had referred to him. Ino was silent for several long minutes and then sighed, turning to the blonde in question. "We don't have a choice, do we?" "No." "Fine," Ino grumbled, and then, hauling back, she him upside the head with enough power to knock the blonde over with a thump. "Free ramen." "Ouch." Naruto rubbed at his head, muttering curses under his breath. It was bad enough that she had him, but the biggest crime was that she had taunted him with free ramen. Lowering his hand, he blinked, wondering if Ino ever needed to breathe, mainly because she was still talking and wasn't showing any signs of stopping. Keeping his silence, Naruto wondered if, maybe, he could go back to sleep without her noticing. No, that would only get her to hit him again. Are you even listening to me? Ino suddenly hissed, startling him. Yay, Naruto said, knowing the next question and wondering what exactly she had been saying. Then what did I just say? Something about spiders, us being trapped, Naruto answered, racking his mind for more information. Lacking exact details, he gave her a hopeful smile. Oh, and something about an old lady and a ninja. For sweet, Ino grumbled before jabbing a finger into his ex. Listen, okay, we are in a spider's den, miles underground, nearly out of weapons, and the mother of all spiders is blocking the way. Shino says that we have to beat that ninja if we ever want to escape, and of course he can't fight due to his connection to those bugs of his. Naruto blinked, staring at her and then shrugged. Okay, and what do you want me to do? Figure out how we're supposed to beat that ninja and escape, duh. Ino hissed dangerously. Naruto blinked, staring at her. For a moment there, she had sounded like a snake, which was funny because he hadn't heard too many of them. Then, seeing the way she was glaring at him, he scratched the side of his head, unable to fully grasp why they needed him for this. Well, Ino hissed once more after several minutes. I'm thinking, okay. Naruto snapped back and then, while Ino mumbled, he focused on what she had told him. Okay, so they were trapped by giant spiders and a ninja. So what did he remember about Kumo Iki? Frowning, Naruto tried to remember all the stories he had ever heard when he had still been living in an orphanage. Were they the ones that ate corpses? No, those were the Jikiniki. Well, what about? No, those were the Yara Mawahu. Were they the ones that liked to live in mountains and hunt children? No, those were the Tengu. Or, Naruto suddenly said, clutching at the sides of his head. Why couldn't he remember the stories about the Kumo Iki? This meant he had bugged those bastards in the orphanage to tell him all those stories for nothing. If he couldn't remember how to beat the damn things, then what was he going to do? Then he remembered something Anko had told him back when they had first started training. You think outside of the box. Keep it up. That seemed to jumpstart his prankster streak, and suddenly he was creating a half-dozen ideas. Naruto-san, please hurry up, Shino said evenly. Gathering his strength, he used his hands to get to his knees and pushed, lifting himself upright, before he looked at both Shino and Ino, grinning. I have an idea. Great, Ino grumbled, climbing to her feet, as well. So, are you going to tell us? It's a surprise, Naruto said, grinning just a little bit larger. Kami, please don't tell me your brilliant plan is counting to 3, Ino muttered. Hey, just trust me, okay? Naruto demanded, his grin fading as he fixed his gaze on her. Fine, Ino grumbled. Just try not to get us K. There's a sale in Konoha I want to go to. Grinning once more, Naruto held up a scroll. Ino eyed the scroll she was holding suspiciously, then glanced at Naruto, who was busy creating a small group of Kage Bunshin closer to the entrance. What the hell did he have going on in that twisted little mind of his? She couldn't even guess. What you see is what you get scroll, and an army of Kage Bunshin just didn't add up to a good idea that she could see. Shaking her head, she studied the scroll once more, wondering what the scroll would do. Then, she looked over at Shino, who was standing close by, looking slightly lost. That was another thing that was preying on her mind. Could he really function well enough to stay with her? Yet, no matter how many times she asked Naruto, he would never tell her his plan. All he ever told her was to open the scroll and head for the exit when it was time. Time for what? Ino wondered before sighing. She would just have to leave it to Naruto. After all, unclear or not, it was the only chance they had. Taking a breath, she closed her eyes and then opened them, watching as Naruto finished talking with his clones before hurrying down the tunnel to her. You ready? He was grinning again, half prankster and half why. Ino wondered how he could manage that, since she felt completely overwhelmed. Naruto-san, you do have a plan, right? Shino asked carefully. Yup. Naruto nodded seriously before glancing at the clones and then back at him, his grin growing. Trying to not get us K. Ino stared at him and then groaned. Naruto took this as a sign that she was ready and turned, rushing to his clones. Let's kick summer. Then, all the clones let out a roar and turned, charging to the end of the tunnel where they suddenly jumped, firing off kunai that exploded. Ino blinked, listened to the sound of chaos and then grabbed Shino's hand and took off running, as well dropping to the floor. She took a moment to study the cavern, taking in the chaos raging all around them and the various chunks of rock that were falling. So this was his plan. Ino-san. Maybe we should open the scroll now, Shino said softly. Blinking, Ino did just that, surprised at the slight shimmering of the air around and then even more surprised as a spider that rushed past her completely ignored them. Turning, she opened her mouth to say something to Shino, only to freeze, finding herself facing a spider. Her brief moment of panic was quickly replaced by the realization that Naruto had used the scroll to henge them both into spiders. Suddenly, Ino understood what Naruto was doing. In all of this chaos and destruction, none of the spiders would notice 2 extra spiders. Which meant the ninja wouldn't notice, meaning they could escape unnoticed. It was brilliant. A sudden nearby explosion jolted her back to what was going on, and she took off, trying to act as much like a panicking spider as possible. It was hard to keep the other spiders from crashing into her and the cage bunchen from attacking her, plus she kept checking on Shino to make sure he was following her. Thankfully, Shino seemed to be holding up well enough, or at least his henge hadn't crumbled and he was keeping pace with her. Still, it seemed to take forever to get near that exit, mostly due to chunks of the ceiling falling all around them, but they were getting there. Slowing suddenly, Ino dodged a spider hurrying in front of her, which allowed Shino to pull ahead. Hurrying to catch up, Ino prayed that nothing happened to put them in real jeopardy. That was when she was forced to stop once more as Shino collided with another spider. Ino glanced at the exit. It would be so easy to just keep going and leave him, but could she do that? Cursing, she allowed her own henge to crumble and rushed forward, grasping Shino and yanking him up as the spider he had crashed into was rushing at them. Ino felt a tremor of fear race through her and then something else took over, prompting her to perform 3 unexpected feats. First, she channeled chakra into her legs for a boost as she jumped, pulling Shino with her. Second, Ino twisted in the air until she was vertical and unsheathed the sword while channeling chakra into it so that the blade through the monster like it was butter. Then, to complete the amazing feat, she landed adroitly with a now recovered Shino. Ino paused for a split second, staring at the sword in awe and then took off as Shino yanked on her hand. The rough-hewn stairs of the tunnel rose steeply, and with every stride they climbed higher along the torch-lit stairway. Ino didn't even want to think about who had created them. All that mattered was that none of those spiders were chasing them. Maybe you're not such an idiot after all, Ino said to Naruto, glancing behind her only to find the blonde nowhere in sight. Suddenly, the one flaw she had never noticed in the plan hit her. Where was he? He should have been right behind them, or at least a few minutes, but she didn't feel like he was. Then, she heard what sounded like someone rushing up at them. So the idiot had fallen further behind than expected. Naruto, are you, like, she was off, however, as the sound grew closer and suddenly revealed a large spider, its fangs gleaming in the torchlight. It was an instinct that did it, or, at least Ino thought it was instinct. One moment her sword had been at her side, and the next it was plunging through the monster's head. It let out an almost deafening screech and tumbled backwards into the darkness. Ino stood transfixed for a moment, staring after it, then looked at the sword. She was broken out of her surprise when Shino jerked on her arm, dragging her further up the stairs. We need to keep moving. What about Naru? Ino started to protest only to have Shino see her off. I do not know. But, he is stronger than either of us, maybe he is trying to buy us time. Ino didn't believe that, but kept her peace, feeling like a coward the entire time. He wouldn't have left either of them behind, but, then again, he had told them to flee, and maybe Shino was right. Maybe he was right behind them, but he was just taking his time to let them escape first. Those thoughts didn't stay for long since her body was starting to finally completely rebel against her. This was the onset of chakra exhaustion. Iruka had explained it to them often enough, and it was only because of Shino that she was even still moving. Her vision was beginning to darken, her air coming in harsh rasps, her mind starting to slip. Then, suddenly, she collapsed, making a soft, sound. It took her a moment to realize that she was lying on soft grass and could feel a cool breeze washing over her. They had made it. Yes. She tried to get up, but her body refused, and her lungs felt like they were filled with water. Eyes fluttering, she drifted on the edge of unconsciousness for what felt like an eternity before she felt energy flooding through her once more. After several minutes, she coughed and opened her eyes to stare up at the person kneeling over her. He was dressed in armor, a sword jutting out over his shoulder, and a white animal mask covering his face. Ino allowed her eyes to dart from that mask to his outfit before spotting the emblazoned Konoha symbol on his armor. Who are you? Anbu, a protector of Konoha and Fire Country, the man said, his hands still glowing faintly. You are lucky that Hayate-senpai found my team. Why? How? Ino stuttered, watching as the man turned to face someone else before looking back at her. That is not important right now. Right now, I need to know what, exactly, happened. What about Hayate-sensei? Ino asked thickly, her thoughts jumbling now. He is fine. The village has been secured and he's resting well, the man answered her calmly. Now, tell me what happened. Ino coughed, head swimming, and she began to tell him everything she could remember, the mission, the time spent underground and then, finally, what she had overheard when she was searching Joji's mind. Falling silent, she stared up at him, feeling as if she was forgetting something, but it was so hard to remember. We need to take them back to the village. For some reason that phrase triggered her memory, and Ino grabbed the clothes of the Anbu that had healed her, jerking his attention back to her. Naruto. The man paused, then nodded. You need to rest. But, Ino started to protest, only to have the man calmly reach out and touch her end softly, then, suddenly, her entire world went black. Watching as the last of the Kage Bunshin disappeared, Naruto cursed to himself, thankful that he could still manage the Maisai-gaka. The spiders had sealed both exits, they knew he was still there, and he was the one they wanted. Crouching down against a chunk of rock that had been blasted free from the wall, he concentrated on his breath. As long as he didn't do anything stupid and remembered what Anko had taught him, he might survive long enough to figure out a solution to this new problem. He just thanked the kami that he was so used to holding still until he figured out his next move. That didn't mean it was easy. He could try to henge into a spider, but with how iffy that was at times, he didn't want to try. Leaning against the rock, he closed his eyes, wondering what he was going to do, only to wince as he felt a sharp jab in the small of his back. Sitting forward, he turned to see what had poked him, and, as he remembered a lesson from Anko, he started to grin. Grasping the rock, he applied all of his weight, snapping the jagged point off. This, of course, alerted every Kumo Iki to where he was, and they started swarming toward him. Cursing, Naruto glanced around to spot the ninja, who was staring impassively in his direction. Well, if he could only K one thing, why not the damn ninja? That decided, he rushed toward the man, noting his plain face even as he allowed his Maisai-gaka crumble. He dodged 3 spiders and, closing rapidly, used the heavy style to push off the ground while the makeshift rock knife arched up at the nin's sea. Just when Naruto swore that the blow was going to hit home, the man snapped his hand out and grabbed his wrist, twisting painfully. The rock knife clattered out of his hand, and Naruto grunted before lashing out with a kick to the nin's solar plexus. The mysterious nin released Naruto's wrist, inhaling sharply. Landing in a crouch, Naruto growled and then launched into another attack, only to have it dodged and countered with a jab to Naruto's face. The force of the blow sent Naruto somersaulting backwards before he s painfully into the rock wall of the cavern and collapsed to his hands and knees. His back throbbing, Naruto gasped in pain, raging at how the man seemed to be reading everything he did. It was like this guy had 1,000 eyes or something. Pushing himself up, Naruto charged forward, pushing off in one way on to change directions in mid-move, driving his punch into the man's chin, snapping his head back. Naruto didn't hesitate for an instant and grabbed the man's shoulder and yanked it down with all of his strength, forcing the man's face into his rising knee. The man stumbled back, dazed, and Naruto plunged ahead, heedless of the lack of damage. Leaping, Naruto delivered a hard front kick to the man's sea, forcing the man to stagger once more before smiling bemusedly. Naruto, of course, remained oblivious to this and just continued attacking, his attacks landing, but resulting in no visible results. Landing after his latest barrage, Naruto stared up at the ninja who was still smiling in a bemused fashion. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto prepared for yet another attack when he was forcibly reminded of the spiders. Seconds after the webbing had s into him, followed by 2 spiders, he was yanked into a kneeling position before the mysterious ninja. You are a very strange child, the ninja remarked. Screw you, Naruto shouted in response, struggling against the webbing. Ryudo-sama says that your chi is quite impressive. She will be honored to receive your gift, the ninja said as if Naruto hadn't spoken at all. What gift? Your chi, of course, the ninja explained calmly. Yes, I agree with Ryudo-sama, your chi should be quite delicious. Say wa, Naruto shouted, struggling at that. He didn't know what chi was, but he understood that she was talking about eating him, and he really didn't want to be eaten. Ryudo-sama must have chi. Otherwise, she cannot give birth to her family. Joji-san did not provide nearly enough to quench her hunger. You, however, should do quite well. The ninja sounded pleased. It will be nice to have true brothers and sisters again. What the hell are you talking about? She's just a damn spider. Naruto shouted, only to have the ninja his cheek hard. Wincing, Naruto stared up defiantly at the ninja. Do not dare to speak. The ninja shouted angrily. Ryudo-sama is an ancient and powerful demon, my beloved mother. She has men twice your size and devoured entire villages before you were born. She has terrorized the dreams of children for generations, and the form she wears now is nothing compared to her true horrible beauty. Okay, I get it. She's evil, Naruto said, snorting. Still a damn spider. You insolent, the ninja shouted, hand rising as he prepared to strike once more, when, suddenly, he paused, as if listening to a voice. Arm lowering, he nodded, turning toward a dark section of the cavern. Please, mother, show him your true glory. Naruto watched as the figure came slowly out of the shadows. Her face was nearly perfect, with lovely green eyes and rich black hair. Then, he saw the rest of her. His mind reeled, staring at those 8 legs and the body. It made a mockery of her beauty. He was so distracted that he completely forgot about struggling, just watched as she strode toward him with 8 sharp taps, with each step. Behold Ryudo-sama, mother of all spiders. The greatest demon in the land. The ninja said fiercely glaring at Naruto. She who has brought greatness to some and death to others. She who shall give birth to another brood, a true brood. Naruto stared up at the Kumoiki as she came to a stop near the ninja, and, when she spoke, her voice was brittle and unnatural. I thank you, most brave warrior. Your chi shall restore mine strength completely, and Monkit shall know his family once more. Naruto opened his mouth to scream, but Ryudo struck like lightning, her legs lifting him up effortlessly. He thrashed uselessly before crying out as she bit into his en. A white-hot searing pain raced through him, eradicating nearly every thought in his head. It seemed to go on forever, him as his vision was beginning to darken. As the searing pain began to fade, and his mind slid into silence, he felt a warmth spreading through him. It was so strange, like he was dreaming as He thrashed once or twice, his mind focusing briefly on fighting back, but, ultimately, his mind went dark, and all that was left was that consuming heat. Then, a part of him shifted, as if it was stirring from a deep slumber. It was malevolent and rage personified. It was evil and it roared. And something inside Naruto awoke. Geez, why do we have to go back? One of 2 white-masked, black-garbed men complained. Probably because you went and said he was probably his companion said blandly. Hey, you agreed with me, though, Hiroko. Hiroko grunted in response, speeding up slightly. Hiroko, unlike his teammate Makoto, knew exactly why they had been sent back. It was actually almost obvious. At least, it would be if Makoto paid attention to things. After all, this Naruto was Mitarashi Anko's pet project. So, of course, at the first hint of Naruto being alive, their captain would send him out to retrieve the boy. The only real question in Hiroko's mind was if the blonde was still alive or not. Considering what this genin team had been fighting, he doubted it. After all, it was obvious that Kumoiki, if they really were those creatures, were well beyond genin. Hiroko, hey, slow down, will you? Makoto shouted, speeding up to matching his pace once more. You should train more, Hiroko remarked tiredly. Or take up teaching. Hey, stop taking it out on me, okay? Makoto snapped, falling silent for a minute before speaking again. Do you think that girl was really telling the truth? That these Akumo Iki? I don't know, Hiroko said, shrugging. I know that the few we fought felt different than those giant spiders in the Forest of Death. So, maybe they are what all those old stories based the Kumo Iki on. Either way, these genin did very well in surviving inside the den. Yeah, I can see why Hayate-senpai is wanting to enter them in the Chunin exam, Makoto said. Though, if he is S, then they'll be one man short again. And a sensei, Hiroko said with dark humor. Remember, this Naruto is really Anko-senpai's student. I imagine she'll be upset if he's S. Oh yeah, Makoto sighed, shaking his head. I had forgotten that. But, if he's alive, Hiroko said, taking the lead once more. I can't wait to see him fight Itachi-san's brother. Hey, that's right. That fight should be awesome, Makoto said, brightening as well. I'll put 20 yo on him. Naruto or Sasuke? Makoto mused as they finally cleared the trees and landed in the same clearing that they had arrived in about 6 hours ago. Naruto. Again, if he survived. Okay, I'll take the bet, Hiroko said, scanning the area carefully. I doubt Itachi-san will let his brother be that poorly trained. But Anko-senpai is going to really push him. Makoto responded, slipping his kusarigama from its pouch and nodding at the entrance that was almost hidden in the rock face. I'll go first, nay. Yeah, Hiroko agreed, slipping his sai from their holsters carefully, following his teammate into the entrance. He was put off slightly by the odd feeling he was getting the further they went into this darkening tunnel. Hiroko quickly lost sense of time. The further they went, the more it felt like it was never going to end. Hey, this is strange, Makoto said, crouching down to check on something. What is it? Makoto said, his tone dubious. At least, I think it is. Looks a bit green. Remember that girl claimed she's one of them, Hiroko said, shaking his head, studying the liquid as well, happy that, for once, their masks actually worked like they were supposed to, allowing them to see in the dark. Here I thought she was just trying to impress us, Makoto muttered before continuing downward, both being very careful not to make a sound. Finally, after what felt like hours, they came to the semi-hidden entrance and, with speed only granted to Anbu, they darted inside, expecting a fight. Sweet Kami, Makoto hissed, stopping suddenly. Hiroko agreed, looking around in awe. Instead of giant spiders waiting to pounce, or enemy ninja, what they found was total desolation. The walls, floor and ceiling were covered in that same green liquid as in the stairway, there were large chunks of rock all over the place, and, most frightening of all was the lingering sense of AK intent. This is, Makoto whispered, looking around intently. That is AK intent I'm feeling, right? What's left of it, Hiroko confirmed, moving slightly to the left, looking around curiously. It had to be unusually intense for us to still be able to feel it. What about that chakra? Unusual, Hiroko agreed again, motioning for them to split up. Moving as noiselessly as possible, they searched the cavern, careful to note the total lack of just K intent and lingering chakra. Meeting in the center, they looked around and then at each other. Is it me, or does this place feel almost like a tomb? Makoto said, his tone uneasy. It does, Hiroko confirmed, nodding toward a large smear of greenish B leading from a man-sized hole in the wall. Did you notice that? Turning, Makoto glanced at what his partner had noted, then nodded slightly. Yeah, scary that a genin could do this. I know. Hiroko glanced at his teammate, then around at the cavern. Did you find his body anywhere? No, Makoto muttered, crossing his arms. I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign. Okay, one step at a time, Hiroko said, twirling one of his sai expertly. We've confirmed that Team Hayate completed the mission and that Uzumaki Naruto s an entire group of giant spiders and at least one assumed Jonin rank ninja. We have no idea where his body is, Makoto sighed. Right, so it's search time. You take the left, I'll take the right. Check, Hiroko agreed, and both Anbu separated, taking their respective sides of the cavern, and began searching. Unlike they had at first, they actually paid attention to the cavern, looking for a body. The initial surprise at such a large amount of destruction had overridden common sense. After all, it was not every day you got to see handiwork of this caliber from a genin. Anko really was a better teacher than he had thought. Now this meant that if he wanted any chance at Sasuke winning, he'd have to train him alongside Itachi. Geez, just how strong was Naruto? Shaking his head, he squatted, lifting a large rock and almost hoping to see an broken body, but found nothing. Standing, he looked around, wondering where the boy could have been. Hey, I found him! Makoto shouted, and Hiroko turned, darting toward the other man. The Anbu in question was kneeling over the battered and bruised form of a blonde-haired child with strange whisker marks. His clothes looked horrible, and his face was pale, but it was obvious that he was alive. Unconscious, but alive. Is it chakra exhaustion? Makoto ran a glowing blue hand over the boy for a moment, then shook his head. Well, he is low on chakra, but it's not S. That's funny. What is? Makoto looked up, and Hiroko could imagine the confused look on the man's face despite the mask. Well, his body's already healing itself. It's moving slowly, but it's just strange. Probably a bloodline, Hiroko said, shrugging dismissively. Let's get him out of here. Yeah, he's okay to move, and I'll keep an eye on him just in case, Makoto said, putting his weapon up before collecting the boy and standing. Don't suppose I could make it 100 yo now, huh? Not on your life, Hiroko responded dryly, turning to lead the way out of the cavern. Spoil sport. Edyoto. The man watched the samurai intently from his hiding spot, knowing that soon he would have to act, but hesitant to actually do so. He had spent a week studying the patrols, he knew the layout of the estate to the last detail. Still he hesitated, the sheer numbers only ensured that this was a mission, but he had no choice. It was his mission. As the current patrol disappeared around the far corner, he made his move, darting toward the outer wall and jumping it silently. Landing adroitly, he took a moment to look around at the garden, savoring its tranquil beauty, and then he darted forward once more. Not a single blade of grass was disturbed in his passage, and soon enough he was at the limestone inner walls. Kneeling, he quickly slipped his foot spikes into place and then satisfied did the same with his hand claws. He could not risk the use of excess chakra needed to climb. Nodding, the man jumped, his spikes finding a tenuous purchase, and then he was climbing. Seconds later he cleared this final wall and landed on the inner courtyard, hidden among the swirling shadows. Holding his breath he crouched, watching as a group of 3 samurai strode past in conversation. Once the path was clear, he darted along and then slipped through the first window he found. Pausing long enough to remove the climbing tools, he stood, taking in the corridor. Eyes adjusting to the dim candlelight, he hurried down the hallway, careful to use the stealthy step, ducking into an alcove as yet another group of samurai passed on a patrol. Frowning, he watched them intently, uneasy now due to the unexpectedness of it. There was supposed to be no guards making a patrol in this part of the mansion for several hours. Tensing, he waited until he was sure they were gone and that nobody else was going to follow, then moved out into the hallway and hurried forward. He made the rest of the trip in peace, stopping at the last corner, aware that he was now facing the most dangerous part of his mission. Slipping a mirror out of a pouch, he peeked around the corner carefully to ensure that the samurai was exactly where he should have been. Satisfied, he returned the mirror to its proper location and prepared himself. Straining, he heard the samurai yawn, and second later he had embedded a kunai into the samurai's skull while darting forward to catch the body and let the samurai slump gently. Easing the samurai to the ground, the man paused, retrieved his kunai and then eased the door open to cross the empty space beyond. Moving quietly, he hurried forward, ignoring various doorways until at last he paused at one that seemed utterly innocent. No different than any other door in the mansion, but he knew that it was his final obstacle on his mission. The kunai slid into his right hand silently as he knocked in the coded pattern known to a select few. He paused, listening to the answering knock, and then responded yet again, speaking quietly. I have urgent dispatches for Kasigi-sama. The door swung open and the man lunged forward, his kunai through the first samurai's tea and then burying itself into the second of the guards. A slight twist and out again. He was moving before they hit the ground, pushing through the door into an inner. Everything was going perfectly. Spotting the desired shoji, he applied chakra to his feet and shot across the anteroom, tearing through the door and lunging for the sleeping figure inside. Kunai gleaming, he plunged it toward the figure's sea, only to have it deflected by a gleaming katana. Retreating, the man paused, studying the samurai that was standing between him and his target. The man was average height and build, the typical red and black uniform of fire samurai. It was seeing those blue eyes and the white hair that alerted him to the identity of his newfound foe. Shinta, formerly of the Konoha hunter Nins. Shinta shifted his sword slightly, his voice firm. Though you wear that mask, I know you. Katsumoto of the Konoha Anbu. Katsumoto lunged at that, ducking the first S at his N, knowing that he was in over his head. Blow after blow was exchanged with the former hunter Nin, each time making it clear that Shinta was not going to allow this attack. Still, Katsumoto could not abandon this mission. It had to be seen through to the end. Then seconds after a brutal exchange left him unarmed, the Anbu knew his final option was at hand. The samurai charged in once more, and Katsumoto timed it perfectly, slipping inside to grab the man's robes and arm while falling backwards. It wouldn't stop the man, but it was enough for the man to have time for his final effort. For unity, that shouted Katsumoto began flashing through a series of hand seals for his special attack, staring at the recovering Shinta almost placidly. The Anbu saw the sword suddenly S through the air and he had just enough time to realize he was still too slow. After that his head was M and his jutsu S unfinished. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.